16.02, yes. Hiring update.
Thank you. This hiring update will be presented by Mrs. Dana Page Pinder, Chief Human Resource Officer, and Ms. Heidi Coaches, Coordinator of Recruitment and Retention.
That video is tough to follow. I'm not sure we'll be able to top that. But good evening, Madam Chair, Board Members, Superintendent Russell. We'd like to take a few minutes to provide an update on hiring our instructional personnel. Just for instance, we held the job fair this year in April instead of June, like we've done for many years. Teachers notified their principals of their intent to return back in February. The transfer fair occurred in March this year instead of in June. And principals notified teachers of contract renewals in April instead of at the end of the year as we've done in the past. We were rolling along trying to staff our schools, and then there was a delay in testing from the state. We waited from mid-June until the beginning of July to get test scores, which really impacted certification. This means that we lost teachers for certification reasons, 74 of them in July. That number has multiplied greatly since they've increased the rigor on the general knowledge in elementary ed and some of the other tests. We've collaborated with our university partners with VUE, trying to find that magic bullet to help people pass that test, and we haven't found it yet, but we are looking at alternate methods to certification, and we're trying to communicate those methods out to people so that they can remain certified. Scores continue today to be delayed. We used to receive unofficial scores for tests like the general knowledge, elementary ed, primary pre-K, so we could hire with those unofficial scores, and those are not available to us anymore. So we're delayed about 4 to 6 weeks. Nevertheless, we press on. As of 2 p.m. yesterday, there were 15 instructional vacancies. For comparison's sake, when we came to you last year this time, we were sitting with 91 vacancies. Our critical shortage area continues to be exceptional student education, and to some degree, the STEM fields, primarily technology education. Our current vacancies that are out there reflect these critical shortage areas, where half of them are about math and ESE. Tech ed is new for us this year, and a big portion of that is due to the technology ed test. We can bring candidates in, they can come in out of field while they pass that test, but the passing rate is low. It's a very tough test for people to take, so they continue to struggle with that test. As of 2 p.m. yesterday, we cleared 348 new teachers. There are currently just about 50 in the process, and by in the process, I mean they're doing background screenings, they're getting us transcripts, and so we hope to have them on board and ready to go within the next week or so. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Heidi Coaches, who is going to talk to you about our recruitment efforts.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Russell. It's good to see everyone tonight. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the recruitment efforts so you can see how we got to that 348 new hire number. And as you can see on the screen, when I started listing all of the activities and events that we did, I kept putting more in and the font kept getting smaller and smaller. So I was surprised at how many events we attended, but I'm satisfied that we engaged in a variety of events so that we had exposure to the many ways and avenues that we could recruit candidates to Volusia. We now host several job fairs throughout the school year because we've learned that recruitment is an ongoing effort. We focus on our current senior interns during the course of the school year by hosting many job fairs and issuing those letters of intent to work for our district. This keeps our interns invested in Volusia and excited about that transition from internship to employment. So you can see the November, the December, and the March job fairs. Those are focused in on our interns that are with us in the semester, as well as any interns from outside the district in the local colleges and universities that we may not host them, but we invite them to those job fairs. More recently, you can see at the top of the recruitment events, we participated in an online job fair for educators through Ed Weekly, and we did that on July 20th. So that was the last bit of summer recruitment effort that we did. It proved to be very successful and very interesting. We had never participated on an online event where candidates from across the nation would visit your booth online, and you got to see a little picture of them in chat via online. Yeah, it was quite interesting to do that. But it proved to be successful, and I'll talk about that on another slide. So there's lots of recruitment events there throughout the school year that we participate in. Letters of intent that we've issued throughout the season. So let me give you a brief background on these recruitment tools that we all call the letters of intent. The LOIs, that's a big buzzword. So the letters of intent are pre-contract type documents given to candidates in a specific certification area. Specifically here in Volusia, we give those letters of intent in our shortage areas, which are ESE, math, science, tech ed, English language arts, and we do include elementary ed in there because we have so many elementary ed teachers we need to hire each year due to retirements. So we include those in there. Our job fairs and recruitment events assist with issuing the LOIs to top candidates by interviewing them and pre-screening these potential candidates for employment in our district. The LOI candidates typically have these amazing results during the interview process, or they score 4 recommendations for hire during the interview process with our principals and our recruiters, and so that's why the LOI is issued. Just wanted to give you. So we issued 166 letters of intent throughout the season, which begins the July before. So I'm going to, I started thinking about LOIs this July for next school year, believe it or not, with those interns who are doing their internship now or who participated in a job fair prior to their internship, and I know they wouldn't graduate until then, so we start issuing the whole year before. 166, and so far to date, we've hired 91 of those. Keep in mind, too, some of those very large job fairs or events that we participate in, we hand out LOIs, but you can watch the candidates walking around with several LOIs in their hands from different districts, so it's a buyer's market right now. So those are our initiatives with the LOIs. Let's see. Hiring our candidates at the April job fair. This was our very first early hiring job fair, held at the Ocean Center in Daytona Beach. It was a successful event. The professional climate and organized atmosphere set the stage for a successful hiring pre-screening event for candidates and schools. It was an event that truly represented Volusia in a respectful manner. The feedback we received from the schools, administrators, cabinet members, superintendent was encouraging, and we are hopeful to continue with these early job fairs. It keeps us competitive with the other districts. They are also doing them, but we did one in April, and a lot of the surrounding districts didn't start until May or June. So it keeps us competitive. There were a few that I heard of that started in March. Pasco County was one of them. So let's look at that. 256 quality candidates that we had in our pool. We hired 73 that day, so that was a big excitement. They got to apply for it online. They got to walk down to the hiring booth, sign the paperwork. We rang the bell, gave them a big, hurrah. We also signed 38 school-specific letters of intent that day for schools that knew the openings would be there eventually. And due to that pre-screening and them walking around during the interview process, we were able to issue an additional 33 district LOIs. So 144 candidates committed on that day, and I've since tracked, and we're about up to 158 now of those candidates who have been hired. Hiring our virtual candidates. So this is something new, but I think we need to be engaged in and continue moving forward on using these virtual online career fairs. Our first one being on July 20th. We contracted with Top Jobs, which issues Ed Weekly, and they marketed for us. They sent out Volusia information that we gave them all across the nation. So between 9 and 4 o'clock, 61 candidates piped into our virtual booth. We got to see their little face, and we got to chat with them online and ask them our questions just like we do in a regular face-to-face job fair. It was kind of like speed dating. It was 10 minutes each we had with them. But within 2 weeks, we had 10 active that had come online and applied online, and we've hired 6. So from July 20th to hire six hires from across the nation that were top quality candidates that wanted to come to Volusia at that late date, that was a successful event that we participated in. Our virtual ongoing interviews that we do, those are pre-screened questions that we send to candidates. They video themselves. It creates a very safe YouTube link, and we send that out to our administrators. We have 7 that are active. We had 10 candidates that did it. We have 7 that have been applying, and we have hired 4. Moving forward and what we've learned. So this is what's working. Our current initiatives, our job fairs, issuing the LOIs, and our recruitment events. The virtual job fairs and interviews are working, and we need to continue learning more about them. Principals who issue school-specific letters of intent in those critical shortage areas, that's a big one. Anytime they know exactly what grade level they can teach, what subject area, what school, that keeps that candidate invested and committed to Volusia and that sense membership. Early job fairs ensure successful hiring of quality candidates, and it keeps us competitive all the way around. We need to continue doing that. We also have learned that candidates are more likely to choose Volusia when they know the school, subject, grade level that they're going to teach prior to the end of their senior internship, by graduation, or by early summer. They need to know where they're going to live, what it looks like, and how they can prepare for it. We also know that if they have time to relocate to the job area, they'll commit to us. They always need to feel that sense of membership with the schools and the administrators. All right.
Any questions?
Sure.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Of all the candidates you have hired, do you happen to know how many were brand new, right out of college, versus how many are just new to our district who are experienced?
I don't have those numbers.
Okay.
Right now. We'd have to kind of go through and look one by one, because when they're going through the search soft process, until they actually verify their experience, which it's a tough thing to do. I will say statewide, because pretty much all the districts have the same process. In order to verify your experience, you have to have satisfactory evaluations, and it has to happen through the district. And so districts just received VAM within the last couple of weeks, and so they're finalizing evaluations. So it's probably right around September, October when those really start rolling in, and then we can check off who has experience and who is brand new, other than the tracking that I know Heidi does when she brings in the interns that are directly from colleges.
Yeah.
Okay, and all of these teachers will be receiving support. I mean, from peers. I mean, schools have plans to help support our new teachers because we want to keep them. We don't want them leaving because they don't have somebody to talk to, especially when they try just not to navigate the classroom, but they have to navigate our computer system, the process, the chain of command. So they have a contact person. Do they all?
I know from experience in talking to principals and assistant principals, and I always send out a newsletter once a year with all of those ideas for new hires, the unspoken rules, where to find your resources, that sort of thing. But I couldn't tell you every single campus's plan. That's not something that I monitor. But I know that we send all of that information out to them, and we encourage them to share their ideas. Of course, the PAR program is in place, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
There are the PAR mentors, and I know the area superintendents, when they send out their weekly notes every Friday, they always have tips in there for making sure that our teachers are being supported and they're feeling welcomed at their schools. So
and this was addressed at the administrative conference specifically, where I talked about the onboarding process, whether it is the Schoolway Cafe, a member of the clerical staff or teacher, also to have a peer on campus to work with them, and also we talked about the coaching that goes on and the academic coaches, especially for the first year teacher and then the second and the third year teacher to follow up.
Good, thank you. And we're going to have Welcome Wagon again, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. I'll be talking to you, Heidi, about some...
Got it.
Okay. And I have a couple other questions. What are we doing to support the teachers that we could not rehire due to certification? Because there's so many of them. Is there a possibility, once they retake the test, that we can bring them back on board?
They are. I know that principals are keeping in contact with those individuals as they take tests, and some of them have retaken the test already, and we're just waiting for the scores. And again, part of that is that not getting the unofficial results and the delays. So we are, and I know I spoke with Robin King, who's actually here, our certification person, and she reached out, and we've looked at some alternative methods to certifications, such as the American Board certification, and primarily for those that have had issues with the general knowledge. And we've reached out to those candidates and made that available to them. So we tried to keep up with them, and they stay in contact with us. And it's not just a Volusia problem, because we are seeing candidates who were let go from other districts in hopes that we don't know they didn't pass the general knowledge, but they're looking for work. They're out there.
Okay. And then in the meantime, we've had to hire someone to take that unit, that place. Mm-hmm. So what do we do when they retake the test? And do we have to find another position if there's another position open?
And they tend to be out there. Vacancies occur all the time. I won't say often, but vacancies occur all the time. So, and our second biggest hiring season is always in December, when people begin to retire, and they're retiring mid-year. So there are vacancies, especially if there's those hard to fill areas like ESC.
Okay, and one is a little, I think, has to do with timing. I know we give a lot of LOIs out in April, but then as we start to examine numbers and then units, especially this year at the high school level, we had to cut back units. Did we have to tell people who already had a letter of intent that they couldn't be hired because the units were cut?
We did not.
We did not.
Okay.
We have not had to do that. Actually, since I've been in HR, we've been pretty lucky with that. So.
Okay. So, but is that?
But there is a clause in the LOI that says if for some reason, for budgetary reasons, I mean, there is an out for that, but we don't anticipate that being the case anytime in the near future.
Okay. Is there a communication set up between HR? I mean, do you have a support system? Because a lot of times you're the ones that our new employees have had contact with. Mm-hmm. Is there a contact number that they can call you to say, I'm having a little difficulty? I mean, is there a resource center for them from the district? We
have Christy Dysinger. Remember her, the Teacher of the Year for Volusia County. She's overseeing our beginning teacher program, so she's their contact.
Okay, good. Thank you. That is wonderful to know. And of all these vacancies that you've mentioned, are these advertised vacancies? Are they the ones that principals have let you know that are still open? How do we know it's a vacancy? I mean,
they are advertised vacancies, and our principals are pretty good. If they've got a vacancy, one that's been hard to fill, they'll reach out particularly to Heidi and say, I'm looking for, I have an issue with. Do you have a list of candidates for those, whatever area they're looking for?
Mm-hmm. And I'm continuing to recruit. I have my schedule on tomorrow is actually, I have 8 candidates coming in to see me all throughout the day, and I continue to recruit. And when those vacancies come up at the last minute or unexpected, they call me. I was on the phone with 2 of them today, and I also through email sent them the candidate list that I have of our most recent recruits, what their certification areas, and I try to match those vacancy postings the best I can. And you are correct when you say those folks who lost their certification due to the testing. Robin and I did reach out and make phone calls and send email follow-ups, and they were just very grateful someone made contact with them, that we cared about them, we wanted them to complete this test, so we have been working towards that as well.
Okay, and Mr. Russell before had promised us that our D-level schools and our low-performing schools would have their staffs completely taken care of. Has that occurred?
I believe there is one that we're working with today, and I know Ms. Rowland was out there and she was working with them as far as the interviews, and they have 3 positions that are out there, and one is a PE position. So that one we don't expect to see out there very long. That's one of the ones that's filled pretty quickly. And
I sent 3 candidates to that school today.
And Heidi just sent 3 candidates today. So
okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, Mr. Garces?
Just so that the general public understands this, what we're dealing with the temporary certifications, can you kind of walk through the fact that teachers can graduate with their degree, say in elementary ed, and get a temporary teaching certificate? Is that correct, or do they have to pass that test in order to start day 1?
So it's my understanding that most of our elementary ed now are graduating with their professional because they're giving them the test ahead of time. Many of our temporaries you'll see in the secondary area, or they are career changers, and they're getting a temporary certificate that is good for 3 years. The issue with the temporary that comes in is when you're on a temporary certificate, by state rule, you have to pass the general knowledge within your first year. And that's where our candidates are getting hung up. It's passing that general knowledge test, in which they increased the rigor 2 years ago?
2 years ago, 2015.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Increased the rigor 2 years ago, and so there's been a struggle. That rate has hovered, first-time test-taking rate's been around 34-35%.
And it was 85% before that.
35%.
It was 85% in 2015, 85.
And then they increased the rigor,
in the last
and
2
the
years.
first-time pass rate's about 35%.
So
You know, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, you have these people who we've hired, and anytime you hire a first-year person, you invest a lot of time and energy in these people, and then often you have to let many of them go because they couldn't pass the test. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, so you'd say, well, wish we could have had them pass the test first, and then we know now we have a legitimate person here who we're likely to keep for the second year, we hope. But that's not our call. That's the state's requirement, or could we, if we wanted to, say, I'm sorry, in Volusia County you have to pass the test first. I know that just makes our task even harder, but I'm still looking at it from both sides, and that's why I asked the question.
It's very interesting, and that's a great point that you make. A couple of things to give you some background knowledge. If it's a state-approved program at the college or university, they typically require those students who are graduating from it who will come out and be eligible for the professional certificate. If it's state-approved, the general knowledge and the subject area test and the professional are embedded in that program. The general knowledge having to be passed by their junior year, the start of their junior year, and then the subject area being passed before their internship or shortly after their internship. So we are also seeing some struggles out of the ed prep programs across the state of Florida. And it's because the general knowledge is getting some of our freshmen and sophomores, and they're not passing it, so they can't even get into the education program. And then additionally, if they do get into the education program, we're seeing some of those interns not be able to fulfill their internship because these state-approved programs won't allow them to do their internship unless they pass the subject area. I do know of a few universities, and I'm a parent of 2 college students, and I will tell you, they've gotten this far, you want them to complete that degree, and you're wondering why they can't get past this hurdle. So they've got a lot of pressure on them from that end, who are allowing the interns to complete the internship with the hopes that they'll pass that test sometime during that internship. But if they don't, they have to stay in school another semester with no coursework, but take coursework in order to keep their program catalog where it is, and then take the test and then graduate a semester late. So it's causing quite a few difficulties all the way around. So we're seeing it, yes, from our career changers or from our folks who have a degree in biology and then they have to take the general knowledge in the first year, but I'm also seeing it on the internship level as well. I'm seeing our numbers go down, and then all of a sudden we'll see a bigger number in the spring because so many students couldn't pass it in the fall, and then all of a sudden they all passed it, and so we may have 40 one semester and then 80 the next because it's
that's interesting. I just want to make sure, and I appreciate your information and insight as well. Did you just say that if in the state of Florida, all of the public schools or public universities, colleges, they're all doing it the same way, or can they differ?
They can decide if they want to differ, but if they are in a state-approved program that's acknowledged by the Florida Department of Education, like Daytona State, then all of those factors have to be met for graduation.
And at Daytona State, let's just use them as an example. The senior interns, now did all of those senior interns, have they already passed the general knowledge test? And
they've passed the general knowledge because they wouldn't have gotten into the education program, and then their requirement is that they must pass the subject area before. I have heard of a few that get to do their internship because perhaps they have coursework after the internship to complete, and they haven't passed that test, but they would pass it the next semester and cannot graduate. Other colleges and universities or online programs sometimes aren't a state-approved program, so they can come out with a degree in elementary education, but they would apply for a temporary certificate, not a professional, and then they would fall into the same category with the rest of the candidates where they had to pass the general knowledge within a year, the professional in the subject area within 3 years.
Let me ask you, since the time when they made the, let's say, made the test a little more challenging, are there track records at each school, like in law school? Often children choose their law school by saying
looking at the passing rates.
Yeah, University ABC, 90% of our students pass the bar on the first try. You know, at school XYZ, only 50%. Well, maybe I won't go to school XYZ.
I think the struggle is across the state, and I will tell you, we used to have resources. We felt pretty confident previously, before they changed the test, to say when somebody was struggling, we could say, oh, you need to go to UCF. They have someone who could teach this. And we could provide the study guides or the resources and feel pretty confident. There were online resources that they could look at those resources and use those resources and pass. We haven't found that resource yet. I know there's a couple out there. I get an email from one every day, but he's teaching strategies. And so I think we're aware of one. I think someone said they were aware of one person that took the course and then passed it, but we've not found that thing that's worked across the board.
Yeah, it's frustrating, and it is across all colleges, state universities, and we are seeing the numbers kind of decline and retract, and then they graduate with an alternate degree, and then they seek out the temporary certification as well.
Thank you.
Excuse me, is it the math on the test, do you know? Is it the writing?
It used to just be the math, but we're seeing essay. For elementary ed, believe it or not, they've added social studies.
Social studies
that's the big one that's tripping people up on the elementary ed exam.
Civics?
We're seeing some reading. So it's across the board.
I will say what I'm hearing from the college professors and directors of the program who are talking to the state constantly and bringing this to their attention, that in the past, when it was at 85% passing rate, first-time passing rate, and you saw a candidate who didn't pass it after the first year, it kind of showed in the classroom, so to speak. You could tell if this person didn't. What we're seeing now are these very strong teachers with witness skills, and they're delivering effective instruction, and the student achievement is showing that, and they're not passing the test, so it no longer correlates. That's what I'm hearing. It no longer correlates with the success of the teacher in the classroom.
So when you said you're looking at alternatives, are you looking at alternatives to the GK exam?
There is a certification that USDOE put in place called the American Board Certification. With the American Board Certification, it's specific areas, and they're in specific states. Florida is one of them, where you can be certified and get a 5-year professional if you are able to pass their test, and there's some coursework to pass their test. It's $1,500, but between $1,500 and $2,000. But if you get your certification that way, you don't have to take the general knowledge.
And we did share that option with our the phone calls that we made to everyone who need that. We shared it. Oftentimes when I was talking to them, though, they had passed 1 or 2 portions, but not the other 2. So going through that program for maybe one section that they needed to pass didn't pay off for them.
And testing itself is an investment. It's $130 the first time, and it's $150 each additional time, regardless of the number of sections that they have to take.
But there were certainly candidates that took the information. I sent it to them online. They looked it up. They were going to look into it. So, you know, we kind of had a mix of both when we were making our phone calls.
Now Madam Chair. Sure. Now for the letter of intent. So explain that a little bit. So if I come to the fair in April, you give me a letter of intent. What is the next process?
So the next process would be that I keep them on our letter of intent list. I send them directions for what they need to comply to keep their letter of intent valid. They do need to have a completed application. They need to accept interviews, and they need to be out there applying for jobs in their certification area. So every LOI that I had on the candidate list we hired. Now, some of them rescinded. They would call and say, Heidi, I've rescinded my letter of intent. I've taken a job elsewhere. Or I would notice the application wasn't complete, or that they weren't applying, so they voided their LOI type of thing. But the ones who are active and engaged and doing everything they want, I keep sending that out. I keep sending their name out to the administrators and principals until they're all hired.
Unless they were school specific. Sorry.
If they were school specific and the principal wrote that LOI to them exactly, then the principal would contact them, let them know when the vacancy posted, and then they could apply for it, and it went from there.
Okay.
Sorry.
So okay, I get that. So in the district, so I received a LOI. I've been applying. Here I am, say June, and I have not been placed. Then what?
I continue to send it out and continue to send it out until they're hired.
But they're guaranteed a job.
They are
with the
guaranteed a
district.
job with the LOI. So we will get them their job. We had everyone seated prior to July 1st. We had them all placed.
So are they aware of that? I haven't had anybody complain. I'm just asking because I
No.
think if I was unable to get a position with you, but I applied Seminole and I was able to get placed quickly.
And I did get a few phone calls like that. I'll be honest, I did.
We had an internal only period this year that went until June 15. So only current employees could see those vacancies. And so we did lose some LOIs because they weren't current employees and they couldn't see them, and it looked like we weren't hiring. So that was.
So our external postings weren't viewable until mid-June, and so that did deter some of our candidates.
So I'm gonna ask a question. I pretty much know the answer, but why?
It was part of, we negotiated a memorandum of agreement to change some of our processes in the VIEW contract that we have, such as not hiring prior to displacement. And so we had a memorandum of agreement, and that was one of the things that we agreed to for that period of time for this year. Is it possible where you all could maybe look at moving all of that up? I just hate to have people apply. Right. It was a 1-year memorandum of agreement, and we would have to talk about it again for next year. But
that's noted.
It was noted.
Yeah. And my last question, Madam Chair. So I'm gonna go back to my Title I schools. So you know I'm really on this thing with South Daytona. So are you telling me South Daytona, Palm Terrace, Blue Lake, who are the other 2 schools?
Longstreet?
No.
No, those are the 3.
Those are the 3?
Yes.
They are completely staffed.
Not Palm Terrace.
Not Palm Terrace?
Right. And he's the one that we were talking
I sent him 3 candidates today.
Okay, and so
2 out there plus a PE.
Okay, and the ones that are completely staffed, did we give them the best staff? That's my question now, because we know how fragile they are. So I'm trying to make sure we're not just placing people to give them position. Are we strategically putting really good people at those schools? And we try not to place at those schools.
Yeah.
Okay. During displacement, I do know, actually probably all 3 of them took candidates, but displacement doesn't mean that there is an issue with the candidate. Displacement means a school lost an allocation, and so they all had that conversation. But we try not to place at those schools because we do know that they are fragile schools. So we let them do their hiring. Okay. That's it.
Dr. Hill?
You said a memorandum agreement. Can you clarify what that is?
When you are changing something that is clearly outlined in the contract, if you want to do something different, sometimes it's an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, or a memorandum of agreement. So we sit down with the union and talk about what we'd like to do and kind of go back and forth and work out the terms of it, and then it's signed off on by VIEW as well as our general counsel. And that's in place for whatever period of time is specified, or negotiations, whichever occurs first.
But this agreement was just specifically designed for that intent?
Yes.
And that intent only?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for all that you're doing.
Good luck. Thank you for all your efforts.
About the recertification, that's what I was going to ask. You're saying, used to you had to make it more offensive to them or help them, or?
No, ma'am. At the last monthly call with the Commissioner of Education, I did bring this up because what Pearson is doing right now, they're just calibrating. But they're calibrating at the wrong time of year. They should be doing this in January and not in the summer when districts are trying to hire. And they have not responded. So tomorrow morning is our next monthly call. Okay. And I'll bring this up again. So Tallahassee does know about this and knows that this is an issue, but it's all about calibrating.
Okay. Thank you. 17.01, the resolution, call to action regarding the DCD.
And this will be presented by Mr. Michael Dyer, General Counsel.
Good evening. At the July 25th school board meeting, Chairman Johnson distributed a draft resolution that's before you this evening for consideration and adoption. It provides a history of the issue of the DCD, how it impacts our district, and references how it impacts other school districts as well. And as you know, this is a particularly important issue for our district, as our district has lost more money than any other district in the state of Florida due to the district cost differential change in 2004 to the tune of nearly $141 million. This resolution, if adopted, provides a call of action for the legislature to amend state law to provide that the DCD statute would ensure that no district be subject to a district cost differential of less than a factor of 1. In practice, what that means is right now, approximately for every dollar allocated to the base student allocation, the core of school district funding, our district receives approximately 96 cents for each of those dollars. So that is determined by statute, and so the proposed change on the second page would add the sentence that no district shall have a district cost differential of less than 1. In practice, what that would mean is if the legislature wished to appropriate funds to districts that claim to have higher costs, they could appropriate those monies without reducing our base student allocation. The second request would be of the legislature to place on the ballot an amendment to the Florida Constitution, which has been slightly updated since the last draft before you for clarification purposes. But the legislature has the authority to place an item on the ballot to amend the Constitution. And public education is governed by what they call Article 9 of that Constitution. And so this resolution would ask for a referendum to add the following sentence to the Constitution: that local school district funding shall not be reduced, but may be supplemented by the legislature through utilization of a cost differential or other index made by law. And again, that's intended to achieve the same purpose as the proposed amendment to the statute. At this time, I would defer to the chair for comments, as this was done at her request, and I appreciate her support.
What I will tell you, I just found an article about the Constitution Revision Commission, and if you submit it before the end of next month, then this can bypass getting signatures, which would help us tremendously. So I've given it to Mr. Dyer, Mr. Doran, and Mr. Russell as of maybe 4 o'clock, just so that they could have that conversation so we could do this correctly. I did meet an attorney that's on the Constitution Revision Commission at one of the school boards I visited, and he has committed to get it before him. I will get this heard, is what he keeps saying. So I'm really, really committed to, and you know, our legislators, I'll tell you, it was maybe 2 weeks after I started traveling and it started making the papers that all of a sudden they would do a study. We've asked for the study since 2004. And suddenly they found the money, they're doing the study, but I don't want a government study of a study because it always has the similar outcome. So that's why I like the extra section saying that if you're not willing to eliminate this or make accounts into our base student allocation, then we want to go to the people. I mean, I don't want to go to the people. I want them to do this. I really do. But if they're not going to hear us, then we have to do this. We did get a resolution. Lake County's already done the resolution. And last night the city of Deltona did it. And I have shared that with the superintendent as it was shared with me. So these are pieces of paper, but they do speak unity, is what I was sharing. So I want them to hear our voice and know that it's not just one county. And I want to keep talking and keep having that conversation, but I'm definitely for this, but I recognize this isn't the complete answer. Any other comments, questions? Yes, Mr. Person.
Thank you, and thank you for all your efforts in this, Madam Chair. Mike, so my question is with, I guess, section 2 at the bottom under the author, you know, all the whereases. In section 2, with the math there on number 2, I guess it's under A, okay. 2, the determination of district cost differential.
Yes, sir. That is the DCD statute language.
And is that the language right now? The district cost differential shall be calculated by adding each district's price level index?
Yes, sir. And so what would be proposed for change is what is underlined at the bottom of that paragraph that begins with no district shall. So the DCD is purely a creation of statute. It's not in the Constitution. So the impact of this statutory change would be that the DCD could remain in effect, but the multiplier would not be less than 1. Yeah. And in this case now, we're 96% and change. So we get 96% of the base student allocation this year.
So then, in effect, what we're saying to the legislature is that those, what are there, 55 districts that are
negatively impacted?
Okay, so the 55 districts who are getting less than 1 now, we are saying we want all 55 to get $1, and then to make this math work, then for those districts who are currently getting more than 1 now, since that if they want to continue to get more than 1 and the money's not going to come from the 55, right, then that more than 1 would have to be a supplemental allocation.
They would basically
to the education budget so that those 12 could continue. Am I doing this right, Ted? You're looking at me because I know you've been there many times with this. Okay, I'm just trying to...
Or they could go back to their taxpayers like we did with the half cent. See, that was what Miami told NPR that frustrated me, was they said we welcome the study, we think we're entitled to more. So then NPR kind of said, okay. And then he started asking me just questions. And he said, I know they told me that millage is set. I said, it's absolutely set. But Volusia County had a heart behind their students, realized we were losing money through this district cost differential. We did an initiative, and they welcomed the half-cent sales tax to help our students. I said, it's time for Miami to ask their taxpayers and not mine for that money. I was just like, oh. And if you see my video, there is a video now.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm saying don't stand on the backs of our children. It's time to stand on your own 2 feet.
Madam Chair, I came in this evening with, along with Mr. Patterson, City Councilman Mr. Patterson, who's County Council. Sorry, thank you for the correction. He earned that very much. He said he was on the state legislature when this came up in 2004, and he said he did vote against it. he got a lot of heat from some of his peers because he voted against it. But he knew that it would be detrimental to his district. Dr. Hall and I and the superintendent via phone conference spoke to Senator Huckel about this a week or two ago, and how she has supported us in this effort. So there are a lot of us who are working in a lot of different ways through the county and the cities, and people are talking about it. When I visited parents and teachers at Cypress Creek Elementary on Meet the Teacher Day, Thursday before school started, I had a set of grandparents come up to me and say, oh, we've been following the DCD argument, keep the fight up. So the word is spreading, and it's quite I guess it's enlightening for everyone to understand. See, not only do we give up 4 cents of that sales tax, but our citizens add another ½ cent to replace the 4 cents we're already losing.
That's right.
So we're getting double whammied.
And I tell people also, you know, I just spoke to another podcast and I said, this is fundamentally wrong. You don't see a fire department, you don't see a police department, you don't see a hospital give their tax dollars to another county. So we've just accepted it. I mean, I can't say that we've just sat here and said, oh, boo-hoo, but that's why I'm trying to stir it up and I want us all to do it. It's not about me. I joked just recently on an email and I said, I want it to be such a big snowball that I just get out of the way. You know, that it just starts propelling so quickly and so rapidly. I talked about the video, and I was going to talk about this more, but the next thing I would like to see, Miss Waite made a Powtoon, a cartoon. It's really cute. But I would like to have a contest throughout the district, and it's now at his level, to ask for that for the students. So Friday, I'm going to ask some people about donating to the award winners. But really, in my mind, the award or the reward is just that this is going to go everywhere. You know, if we could get 10 more videos or 10 more cartoons or 10 more public service announcements through creative students, this is things our staff won't have to figure out and do extra. But also those kids are so smart out there. And maybe we could give them certain bullet points that they have to include. I don't know. But I'm just, they're going to meet, they're starting to meet in committee next month in September. And I want them concerned about losing control in the state legislature and taking it to the people. And I don't mean that negatively. I just mean I want them to start acting on it so that they make that decision is what I'm hoping. I don't know that they will. They haven't in 13 years. Yeah. But this is snowballing quickly, so I want them to hear us. I want them to hear everybody. Mr. Superintendent, do you have a recommendation? Oh, any other comments? Sorry.
No. I was just going to say that this resolution, it seems like this would be something where we could send to other districts, just take out the words Volusia County.
I did. And
all references to our dollar amount that we lost, they fill in the blank with the amount that they lost.
We have a template, and we are sharing it. Yeah. And Lake actually passed it before we did. I was laughing, and so did the city of Deltona. But I would like it to now, once we do it, I've got that list created of all the districts, the school board members, the superintendent. So now I want to shove this out. I almost want to do a weekly email once I get the hang of this, and maybe do the Powtoon the next week we do this. We show them what we've said and what we're doing. I've reached out to Polk County Chair because they meet exactly the same time we do, and they've lost almost as much as we have. And she's already called back, but we missed each other. So I'm going to keep that conversation going because they're definitely interested. I'm seeing people retweet that I haven't even spoken to districts. We created memes that I can put more words than Twitter lets you. So I can say what I want in that little picture, and then I just stop DCD theft at the top and tag some schools and tag the school that's in it. So I'm just trying to challenge, and I'm telling, even on the video, at the end I said, follow me at Twitter and use the hashtag DCD theft. So then, oh my gosh, the state legislators are all starting to see that everywhere they look. That's what I'm wanting. I'm wanting to just blast social media with this. So feel free. Anything you guys feel compelled, put it out there. If you need information, get to the superintendent. If he'll get it, he'll find it, whether it's through me or someone else.
Okay, the superintendent recommends the adoption of Resolution 2017-17, call to action regarding the district cost differential.
Move approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Madam Chair, and if it's appropriate, what we can do is make sure that each of you have an electronic copy of the signed resolution.
Please.
And the template, if you wish to share with any of the municipalities within your districts.
I think it would be
Chair.
even interesting to send it to use Deltona City has given us permission. I mean, they've already sent it publicly to use that this city has already done this. Will you join us? You know, and start sharing it with cities. Start sharing it with everybody. Anybody you guys think, if you have a great idea, please, if it's between meetings, get it to Mr. Russell. He'll share so that we don't violate sunshine law, but just that we can all participate. So it's no lone person, it's all of us. Yes, sir.
I think it would be a good idea if Mr. Dyer sent it out to all the Florida school board attorneys so that they would have it, so that if the issue comes up, they would, because he's, you know, we're a member of the Florida School Board Attorney Association, so with a push of a button, he could get them
Maybe
ready.
minus 12? No, I'm kidding. I'm
He
joking.
could get them ready with the document, then, you
Yeah.
know, that
That's awesome.
hurdle
Thank you.
is covered.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
And in Polk County, we'll be talking about it because Tim, the former president of FSBA, we had our discussion on our executive board meeting. So I know he's planning on discussing that with his board.
Good. Good. Great.
And what
Thank you,
about
Mr.
the
Mayor.
Central Florida School Board?
They canceled their meeting
I
this
know,
month, and
I
then
know.
so did the elected officials. I was prepared.
I figured you were, and
I
then
was
they
just
said
like,
that we're
so
not going to have a meeting in August.
I know.
So.
They don't. They never have in
Okay.
Orlando because
Okay.
it's the first
But,
back to school.
But you will in September, if you can.
I believe I have to make sure the elected
Right.
mayor, but yes, if I'm not, you get it.
Okay. Well, you'll tell me every.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir. Because I this is so important. So important.
What about county council?
Okay, I wish he was here when I said this. I heard when you go to county council and you do public member comments, it's before the meeting starts. So they might be drinking coffee in the back. They might be there. They might not.
That's very true.
Well, I have. Oh, I hope they hear me. I don't mean this offensively. It's just when I go there, my time is so limited. So the idea of me speaking to nobody doesn't excite me. So I'm going to try to see if we can get on the agenda. If I can get on the agenda. I don't know how that process works. Because when I reached out to my county, he said, oh, just come for I said, no, I heard you people aren't there. I was real honest.
Some of us were there. Some of us were there.
And he said, well, in the afternoon. I said, okay, what time is it in the afternoon? Well, that's hard to say. It depends on what's going on. And I'm just like,
evening.
So anyway, I'm going to try to see if I can get on the agenda because I feel like it's valuable they actually hear it. And I'm just not speaking into the record.
Well, let us know so we can be there as well.
Yes. Thank you.
Do you have a copy of the Deltona City Commission?
I emailed that to Mr. Russell, who should be dispersing it.
I can send it out.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
They told me to be cautious, so I don't want to break any rules. So I sent it to him.
Thank you.
And then they decide. But yeah, I'm excited. This is going to happen this time. This is the year.
This is the year.
This is the year. 17.02, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This presentation on House Bill 7069, the update will be presented by Mr. Michael Dyer.
Good evening. I have a very short, outdated since this meeting started. When I was last before you, we had confirmed 5 school districts that had authorized joining the lawsuit. Palm Beach County, shortly after, confirmed their participation, increased it to 6. As of this evening, it is moved to 9 districts and representing 1.25 million students approximately. The Polk County School Board this evening, since this meeting started, voted to join the lawsuit. Orange County Schools has it on their agenda this evening. They did discuss it at a workshop, and they could not vote, but based on the board member comments, it appears that they will join, and we'll know that by tomorrow morning. So assuming Orange County does join, based on their comments, that would be a total of 10 districts. The discussions with the other districts have, as I shared with you before, centered on an equitable cost-sharing arrangement based on student enrollment. So if Orange does join, as we would anticipate, Volusia's portion of that student enrollment is 4.7%. So you had previously authorized expenditure limit, and the good news is that the more districts that do join and the larger they are, that reduces our overall cost. So I'm pleased with that. There are several other districts that are considering it. It would not surprise me if that number increases beyond 10. And so what I'll do is continue to update you on future board meeting dates. Lawsuit has not yet been filed, but it is a work in progress, and our hope would be that it would be filed by the 1st of October. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this point.
Mr. Purdy.
So can you walk us through the process, what would happen after the lawsuit is filed?
And hopefully we'll have a few other districts that will join at that time. One possibility would be to request what they call a preliminary injunction and again, the discussion has not been to file a legal challenge to all of House Bill 7069, but to focus on portions of it that are to be argued that are unconstitutional. So if an injunction is sought, that would happen in a rather expedited pace as far as litigation goes after the lawsuit is filed. The standard for those can be high, but would be optimistic that could be achieved. And if an injunction were granted or not granted, the litigation would proceed on its merits. And it has not yet been fully determined, but the length of the litigation really is going to largely depend on the arguments that are filed. Much of what I discussed with you, actually all of it, at our board meeting 2 meetings ago, was the argument that these portions of House Bill 7069, the Schools of Hope, the mandating the use of a state charter contract, the sharing of the discretionary capital millage, on their face are unconstitutional, meaning that you do not need to know any of the facts beyond the face of that statute that they violate the Florida Constitution. No litigation is easy, but the scope of a facial constitutional challenge is much narrower than if you were to argue that it may appear to be constitutional, but as it's applied to us is unconstitutional, which is, they call that an as-applied challenge, and you get into very fact-intensive arguments there and discovery and depositions, and so that can make prolong a lawsuit. So the narrower the lawsuit, the more expedited it could be. But we should be under no illusion that I would anticipate this case to go all the way to the Florida Supreme Court. I expect it to be the state to fight it every step of the way.
Any other questions?
Will school board attorneys be involved? Will you be involved with other school board attorneys?
Absolutely. We've had that discussion. You know, anytime you get more than one attorney in the room, you know, you can see things a different way. But no, actually, part of the discussion has been that we will do as much as we can also to contribute to the suit. I know every district is sensitive to cost. It does not go into this. No one likes litigation, but they're sensitive to cost, and whatever we can do to on our part to keep costs down, we will do so.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer.
We have a break. We're almost done.
We just started comments.
Okay. 18.01, items from the school board members, superintendent or board attorney. Who'd like to start? Don't all jump at once.
I have nothing.
Okay. Ms. Wright? Okay. Mr. Persis?
I have a question. Maybe the superintendent can walk us through it a little bit about the recent situations, that we had at Blue Lake and Palm Terrace, and with the state coming in, and I'm not sure if the word terminating or transferring, or I'm not sure the words. You can probably speak to that, but I'd like just for the public to know just how that process works and why it occurs so soon to the start of the school year, and because of the disruption that, of course, that presents to us, and then maybe you can relate or connect that to the type of teacher evaluation system that we use in the district and what is required by the state, and how this all sort of comes to be, because we continue to get questions about it. Mm-hmm. And it may be something for the rumor mill, but to address. But I'll give you an opportunity to speak to it if you'd like now.
Thank you. We will, in the coming weeks, present the turnaround program that we've submitted to the state. We have been a very successful district of turning around schools, and we work very closely with the DOE. In the statute, what it has said is if a school has a double D, or a triple D, or a D and an F, any combination, they use the value-added model. That's the VAM score. Yeah. And it said any teacher that needs improvement, or they are unsatisfactory, they are to be removed from the school.
Now, can you just stop right there? When you say unsatisfactory or needs improvement, is that the Volusia County evaluation?
No.
Or is that an evaluation?
That's the value.
That's the VAM score.
And it's a 3-year file.
And is it only a 3-year follow on those schools that were the D's and F's? Or
Yes.
is every school being
just those monitored? Those schools.
So as soon as you get a D that first year, are those schools now starting to be monitored in case they become a D the second year?
Yes. And so, this was the first time that we saw it, and
Right.
it came very late. In fact, the first file that came ended at the 2015-16 school year, and 3 years worth of data. So this was a week before the teachers were coming back. And so I appealed to the state, and they said, look, the unsatisfactory teachers have to be moved. Now, their evaluation from the administration was not less than proficient. Okay, and so this is the value-added model. And so what they said is, if you will provide support for those teachers that needs improvement, they can stay. Okay. So we did agree to that. We made the moves we had to make. And then a week later, the new file came out with 2016 and 17. And so we went down the list, and there were some more teachers. And so we had, it really put the schools behind, the 8 ball. I do know, as we've said, Palm Terrace, we're still trying to hire. At Blue Lake, they handled the situation very quickly. They were able to collapse some classes and all that. And so, you know, they're fully staffed. And so that is what happened, you know, with that model.
Okay. So, so right now, those teachers that were identified as by the state as unsatisfactory, they will be looked at the end of this school year.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And when again will it be just that week before school starts once again, and before we know? With the VAM, I don't know. It depends when the state releases those files. And it always appears to be. I've just looked the last couple of years, very late. It's always in August.
It is in August, but now we saw how it worked. We do have the 16 and 17 file. I do not believe it would happen, but let's say if a school has one D and then they get a second D, we already have that file. You know, and then, you know, that is. You have that file. What exactly do you mean? There's a file on each teacher, and it shows 3 years worth of VAM scores. Now, and this is one of the problems that educators have with it. Let's say early in someone's career, they had an unsatisfactory or needs improvement. It takes 2 to 3 years. They could be proficient after that, you know, with their scores, and it will still show us a needs improvement. It takes, as Eric Collins said, it can take 3 to 5 years to clean that up. Okay. You know, so you know, that is one of the issues. And has the VAM score been challenged by anyone? I mean, is it valid? I mean, because if it's not, then I would just assume someone has been challenged. I mean, that's another challenge, I guess. But I'm curious, has it been challenged by any districts or any teachers or? Well, the state is saying districts can use an alternative to VAM, okay, which is good. So my question last week was this, okay, but will they still use the VAM score at your priority and focus schools? And I was told yes. So even though we can have another mechanism in our district, they're still going to collect VAM data, you know, until that's changed. Perhaps you can ask the commissioner that tomorrow. Add that to your question list before you talk to him.
Mrs. Cuthbert? Yes, I have several. Thank you. First day of school, I was very proud to ride on a bus route. As a teacher for my entire career, the students were always brought to me, and I have made it, I guess, a mission during my term to see what it's like on the other side. For example, when I wrote recommendations for juniors to be part of tomorrow's leaders, and now I went on to field trips with those tomorrow leaders to see what I got them into. And then my eyes were open of some of the situations that bus drivers face. I didn't realize how many people put their children or sat on corners that were not bus stops. And they're not really allowed to stop at undesignated bus stops. And so it was very interesting, very interesting. And boy, I'll tell you, those kids really look good that first day of school. I don't know what they look like now, but they certainly look good then. So, and I was pleased to do that. Now, I went with the New Smyrna Hub on the first day of school, but I also have schools in Port Orange, and I believe they work out of the Daytona Hub. And if they do, I want to take a bus ride the first day of the second semester and ride my Port Orange schools. As I said before, Dr. Hall, Mr. Russell, and I spoke with Mrs. Huckel, who's looking really well, before she goes to Tallahassee. But one thing I wanted to make sure we did talk about that Dr. Hall emphasized a great deal was to find alternative ways for our students to graduate. And it was, most times it's an FSA. And one thing that most people don't realize, that if you don't graduate with a high school diploma, not only do you not get finance from a college, but you also can't join the military. So it dooms our students with a certificate of completion to non-professional positions. So that needs to be worked out, and her eyes were open. She didn't quite realize the impact that diploma of completion made. So I'm going to make it a routine that I do speak to her each and every year, that we have more contact with our legislators just so they have support. She didn't talk to us about 7069 because we have decided to, but I did give her a copy of Mr. Dyer's memo to us just so she knows where we are. We also provided her with a copy of our tentative budget, also several other issues, just so she knows what's going on in her own home county. I would like to ask Mr. Aiken, I'm sure he can let us know later, how the security fences are coming along for elementary schools. I was at Indian River Elementary this morning and noticed they still don't have one. So I was just wondering how that process is going. So you can talk to me later if you wish, but I am interested in my schools because I see a lot of my schools have them, but few still do not. And also when we talk about fencing, I go by Spruce Creek High School on Clyde Morris, and I see lots of signs. I see them in front of Port Orange Elementary. Not all the schools have the signs facing the streets. And it's always kind of bothered me a little bit. I think it's a bit tacky. I think it makes our school district look a little desperate. At Cypress Creek Elementary, they line the inside of the parent pickup, which is great, because that's our target anyway. I don't think we should take away a PTA's or school's avenue of raising funds, but I myself, I don't think I like it when the advertising faces the street.
That's what they're paying for. So I don't know.
I know. But if we could find other ways to do it on campus, just not facing the street, because I really don't want our schools to turn into advertising agencies when they meet the public. When you're inside the school grounds, I can see it if it's when you've got a captured audience and it's student pickup area. I think that's okay. I'm just putting my 2 cents worth in that maybe we should think about that. And also, I would like to know, Ms. Marks, teachers on the September 1st have a day off. Kids have a 4-day weekend.
They don't have a day off. They have professional development.
I know. Kids are off. Kids are off. But see, when I taught, it was a day off. You know, kids were not there. But could you fill us in on what teachers will be doing that professional day, that Friday, September 1st? Pretty please? All right.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to share with you. We have undertaken a new adventure with professional learning and targeted professional learning this year. It began during pre-planning. And for the first time that any of us can remember, elementary school teachers, every elementary school teacher participated in some professional learning about their resources that they have for their curriculum, specifically in ELA, math, and science. This was done with each elementary grade level meeting as a team on their own campus. It was done virtually. We used Canvas and supplied many materials and videos there. We were monitoring, I think, was it 8 to 12, Rachel? From 8 to 12, we had live chat boards where there were questions that were embedded in the PowerPoints or in the Canvas modules that they were working through. And the whole purpose was to begin to give them time for not only to explore their resources in new ways, but to begin to have some time to plan together and plan lessons that were based around the standards using the materials that they had. And providing, and let me say, supported planning, because that chat board was open from 8 until noon and questions could go that way. Of course, they can contact people, curriculum people with questions the way they traditionally do as well, through email and over the phone. But that was a new adventure, and Mr. Spar and I I don't know, we had our video debut, and but a part of the message is that we're working together to provide teachers more direct support in time to learn their standards, because as we all know, the assessments and the end game that they have to teach so that students are prepared to do are all focused on those standards. So we've the last several years we've had a day designated as a professional learning day, and there have been a variety of different things that have happened, and most of them were school-based. This time what we are doing, and again I say we're venturing a new territory here when we're doing this. So it's a little bit different elementary and secondary, so I'm going to talk about that first. In elementary, we have 6 to 10 regions depending on the grade level and the topic that teachers choose. And teachers can choose a track that they want to follow. So I'm a first grade teacher and I'm going to choose ELA. And if I'm choosing ELA and I'm at Port Orange Elementary, then it might be at my school, but it will be in a school that is geographically close. And other first grade teachers from that geographic area will go together and they'll meet together and they'll be taken through, they'll be led through, really, they'll be talking about the standard and then they'll be given time for planning together. We're trying to build not only school-based PLCs, professional learning communities, but we're trying to expand that to regional professional learning communities, because it could be that my first grade team at my school is all relatively new. And sometimes that happens. And so then they can be working with a team of teachers from Sweetwater Elementary who might have more experience, and that they can be learning and mentoring each other and learning together. So the idea then is that teachers are choosing within their grade level. They can choose reading in K2, K3. It's between reading and math. K2, it's the choice is between reading and math. Thank you, my backup, Rachel Hazel, thank you. But then 3 through 5, they also have the option of choosing science as well. To choose there. Our ESE teachers in the elementary grade level, if they are teaching more of the self-contained, more of what we would call the access type courses at secondary, more of the multi-VE or modified programs, they would have some specific training pertinent to them. All of the other ESE teachers, along with the ESOL teachers, would be working, making some of those same choices. Do I go with first grade? I work primarily with first and second grade, so I'm going to choose to go to second grade math to make sure that I can better learn that curriculum to better support my ELL students. So that's what elementary looks like. Secondary is a little bit different, but it's similar in that they have their geographic region is a little bit larger. It's the east-west geographic regions, and if I teach 12th grade English, sorry, my examples are mostly ELA, but if I teach 12th grade English for a couple of sections, and I have a couple of sections of AP composition, or literature, I can make the choice. Do I want to go to 12th grade English, so English 4, or do I want to go meet with other English Lit, AP English Lit teachers to work on this year, learning the standards, planning together, and working together. So that is, in a nutshell, the what they're going to be doing. Special area, Rachel? Special area that's meeting. So, and a part of what's happening in special area as well, one part of House Bill 7069 charges us with literacy skills teaching and training non-core teachers how to incorporate literacy skills into their curriculum as well, so that would be a part of the emphasis for them. So they each all have something directed for them, also allowing choice for where they would like to go and what they would like to participate in.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. And would you be able to let us know the next meeting how that worked out?
I certainly will.
Okay, great.
We had, from pre-planning, we had some very positive feedback. We had some very positive feedback. We had a couple little speed bumps, as you can experience when you're doing something different. But for the most part, everything went very well, and we received some pretty positive feedback.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Ms.
Thank you.
Sparks.
Can I ask one question? I forgot when you reminded me when you started talking. Mr. Spar, when he was speaking earlier, he mentioned about that special area schedule at elementary. And so
it involves 2 schools, and Rachel Hazel's working directly with him.
And is it a staffing issue, or is it just a
I think it's the school schedule that they're working on. So
individuals,
yes.
So it's not a district-wide.
Not what I've been told at this time, but we'll certainly look into it. Because
I think it's worth
sure. And you know, it's also very interesting at the elementary level. Is it's going beyond PE, art, and music.
Yeah.
And you're seeing technology in these schools now where they're teaching robotics and coding. So it's not unusual to see a technology teacher, with that going on. I think it's cool. Awesome. It's really neat.
It's great.
Those little Spiros.
Yeah.
Those are awesome. Did you have anything?
I just want to say I feel much better than I did 2 weeks ago, and I'm glad to be here. And we had an exceptionally strong opening, and it was the planning of the principals and assistant principals, the work of the teachers, but I do want to point out the clerical staff, because I went to many schools, and I was told last week, you need to go to Palm Terrace, and you need to meet the registrar, Miss Sims. She is a receptionist, and they said if anyone needs a lesson in customer service, it's watching her. And then I watch the front office staff. It is busy when you open up, begin a school year, and what they dealt with. So, we do appreciate that. And then district, the operations with Transportation Schoolway Cafe, that was wonderful. Our community is exceedingly generous with backpacks, with uniforms, with haircuts. And they came out with the Million Father March. And then also when you saw the red carpet treatment, community members just came out there.
Cried.
To be
Some
with
of the
our
parents
kids.
cried.
It was great. And then we had 40 interns in here last Friday, and I already told them if they successfully complete their internship, they have a job in December. They'll be December graduates at Volusia County Schools. So I'm helping you out.
Tell
Ms.
them to pass
Bates-Mender.
that test too. When they're doing
Well, they had to pass. They've already
good.
passed.
Good,
so
good.
clean and green. Thank you.
One thing, the Florida Policy Task Force on Assessment, and we talked about VAM. So about 2 weeks ago, I attended a workshop over in Kaiser University in Orlando. It was sponsored by one of the senators, Renee Garcia. And in that, they were talking about how can we address assessment. The governor has created a task force to look at that. So they invited board members from all over the state, as well as assessment coordinators. We had about 3 there and maybe 16 board members from different counties that attended and talked about assessment, what we can do. But one of the things that was very interesting during our conversation dealt with critical thinking. And so this is probably a shocker, as they talked about using technology and all of the good things that we do with technology. Have we ever thought about maybe that kids from kindergarten to 4th grade maybe shouldn't use technology? Should not. Mm-hmm. Because as they starting to look at studies, most of their skills are being somewhat diminished by technology. Mm-hmm. And so now as they start to look at critical thinking, technology has played a major role of why they're seeing that diminish. But going back to 2 questions you asked, they are looking at alternatives for graduation paths. So that was one of the things that the governor had asked. In addition, we talked about the VAM scores and how that too need to be revisited. So they will be meeting again after the holiday, right before session, because they are bringing forth a recommendation to the governor about the meetings that they've had. They've had one down in South Florida at FIU, they had the one at Kaiser University, and then they were heading to the Panhandle in about a week to have one with board members, assessment and data clerks from the districts there, as well as some information from various states. But it was really interesting, again, because we actually talked about some schools over on the West Coast, that they have decided that from kindergarten to third grade to remove technology. And, you know, we had the conversation, when you look at Silicon Valley, many of their children attend schools that do not use technology for that purpose, to build those skills so they can think critically and solve problems without using or needing some device to give them an answer. So that is really interesting
like
studies that's going
subtracting.
on.
Like adding and subtracting.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Interesting.
Mr. Doran, do you have anything? Okay, so I was able to visit 15 of my schools. I actually have one. I did not make it to Legacy Scholars, which is at Florida United Methodist, but I will. It is just exciting to see and feel the energy of a new beginning. And so all the schools were showing me Deltona Middle. I went during the teacher kickoff, and they've actually started the houses. I think I brought that up. Well, then I went to a couple elementaries, and they now have the houses. And then Heritage Middle, I went to see the new. They're under construction. Of course, they had some vandalism, and I went to look at the chiller plant, and it's just massive. It's on. They had to actually bring in a portable chiller that they're paying the company that's doing this $500 a day for the gas to run it because of delayed in equipment being brought, everything. Just lots of factors, but I'm glad we don't have to pay for it. My big thing is I want to make sure you guys are visiting your cities. I wanted to just re-inspire you. I've actually requested as of today a meeting with the editorial board at the Daytona Beach News Journal. That was suggested so that we could work together more with this DCD. I am going to Eggs and Issues. I'm also going to the educational committee at the Daytona Chamber, who they just got a really big award for doing a great job, so I do want to bring that up. The day after Labor Day, I'll be at Highlands County School Board. It's a couple hours away. I kind of set a 2-hour drive limit each way, and Escambia is 10 hours up in the Panhandle, but they're like us, over $100 million lost. So I've reached out to see if I can Skype with them. Polk did not have that ability. I was wanting to just take a recess or hand you the gavel and run and do 3 minutes, but they didn't have that capability. So that's where the new video came out of me just speaking from my heart about what's going on. The Powtoon is awesome. Cartoon, but like I said, I want to see the kids get involved too and see what they can create from their class levels and maybe get grades for it, whatever their teacher decides. Also, I'm grateful you spoke to Senator Huckel. We've communicated, but not a long meeting since she's recovered. So I want to have another meeting with her and have that conversation. Still, yes.
One thing that happened from that, the meeting right after ours, she had scheduled the president of Daytona State, Tom Bosco, and Mrs. Hosseini were coming in as a trustee. So we got to meet with them, with Senator Huckel, for about 20 minutes afterwards. That was very productive, talking about how our students are graduating, still with lacking some literacy skills, and they have to be remediated at the community college level. And I did ask if there was some way that we could have a meeting between 12th grade teachers and his instructors to see what we can do to help our senior teachers.
Well, my Deltona Middle School is with the new money for the for their STEMs. They've got the 2 rooms. They're actually inviting every elementary school that feeds into them, the 5th grade teachers and the students, to work together collaboratively so those teachers know what's happening, and to work together, which is always what I've loved, is vertical, you know, and then reaching out to one another, but going up too and down. So when they come to middle school, what are we missing something at the elementary level, you know, that maybe we could have done better, or are we doing something great at one school but other schools not quite, you know, just having that conversation. Wednesday I did go to Futures, and I was able to discuss the DCD, and they actually, Lynn from the construction company said they are 1,000% behind us. I think I shared last time Florida Hospital. Their CEO is going to make this part of their conversation with legislators and lobbyists. So the more we get those connections that I wouldn't have, that they could keep speaking for us and with us, because this is a trickle-down effect in the community. One of the things the CEO said at Florida Hospital was he is challenged to get physicians in this that want to live in Volusia County. They tend to want to cross the bridge and just drive over. So he wants to be able to help be part of the leadership and the conversation. So with that being said, we're meeting adjourned.